headline, or the I guess the starting question for this panel, which we'll definitely be addressing, amongst other things, is how is a successful blockchain game different to a successful standard game or traditional game, which is actually quite a kind of interesting question, I think, to sort of tease open. So I hope the panelists are sort of ready for this sort of stuff, because I think clearly there's some aspects of blockchain games that are going to be the same as say traditional games, but clearly there are some very different aspects as well, and I guess that's something we've seen in the talks with Alexander, Jesse, and Vlad as well. Good. So panelists all here, lovely, and also it's good that actually we have our panelists are sort of each has a sort of separate sort of business in the blockchain game space. So it's not like we've got all developers. So hopefully we'll get some different sort of opinions and some different perspectives on how this sector is sort of playing out, because people are doing different things. But anyway, let's get some introductions done first. Skirmantas, you want to just remind people who you are and what you do at DappRadar?
Hey, sure. Good to be here. So Skirmantas here, CEO and co-founder of DappRadar. Well, my journey in the blockchain gaming started when CryptoKitties exploded back in late 2017. And since then, for me, it was all about how to stay on top of all of this kind of sexy technology and all the developments that are going around. So in early 2018, we founded DappRadar as a simple website that shows you a ranked list of dApps. And now DappRadar is the world's leading dApp store with DeFi, NFTs, games, and any other vertical that, well, you can find on the blockchain. And we're sending 1 million users to dApps every month now. So that's my little story.
Thank you. Tony Pearce.
Yeah, hi John, hi gang. Tony Pearce, I'm the co-founder of Reality Gaming Group. We were founded back in 2017, which seems like decades ago in the blockchain lifespan. And we create games that integrate NFTs and blockchain.
That was very short, very, very succinct. Good. Okay, David.
Yeah, I'm David Kim. I am with a company called Whitney.io, which helps companies bring projects to the Wax blockchain. My background actually is in more traditional game development and publishing. I've worked at several major publishers and recently transitioned into the blockchain space.
Cool, good. Bozena.
Hi everyone, I'm Bozena. I'm leading Gamee as the CEO and co-founder. And Gamee dedicates their time to mobile gaming platform. We have been together with the team building Gamee since 2015. We have launched over 80 games. We have community of 30 million people. And last year, we have joined Animoca Brands, which is a leader in blockchain gaming. And this is the moment when we started our blockchain journey as a company. And since then, we have launched Gamee Token. And last week, we have launched a new product of Gamee that is powered by blockchain and that hit the top decentralized apps on DappRadar. So yeah, happy to see the face behind the ranking.
Yes, you could download the mobile app now and idle mine some cryptocurrency.
Well, it's just a rewarded waiting line for the big thing that's coming late October. So it's really cool to see that people are excited to what's coming, and they're like there is a bunch of them, so quite a bunch.
I think I'm up to 1.2 at the moment, so I'm doing okay. Finally, Malte, is it silent E? I'm sorry, I'm terrible with pronunciations.
It's fine. I'm used to different shapes and forms.
What should it be though? How should I be? How should I be doing it?
Like think of malt whiskey that works around the globe.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Yeah,
what do you do at Bitcraft? What does Bitcraft do?
Yeah, we specialized investor in the gaming field, and every single time we see new upcoming computing platform evolve, we get very excited. I'm a software engineer by training, and so every single time you start having such platforms, you gotta start coding on it to learn about a bit about it. And so it was back in 2015 when Ethereum was pretty fresh. In a different context, it wasn't games. We built essentially an application for background screening and put it on a chain on Ethereum. Very early days. Was too early in terms of like cost and scalability and whatnot, but got us hands dirty. And then afterwards been involved in a few of the early days in ICO land when it comes to games. And then fast forward the movie a little bit, we as investor, laser focused around gaming. We put a dedicated blockchain crypto fund into the ground to like invest on the intersection between gaming and crypto. This year we made 5 investments into the space and try to help the developer community to push the limits. Big believers on the theme. Still, we feel very early days, so make no mistake. You think of the bigger picture there. There's a lot of interesting growth ahead of us.
Good. So we've got a game developer. We've got a sort of a blockchain. I'm seeing you, David, as sort of a equivalent to a blockchain. We've got a sort of gaming platform with Bozena. We've got Malte with his investment strategy, and then Skirmantas doing data and sort of a kind of a discovery layer. So different aspects to discuss. What's the difference between a blockchain game and a traditional game? I guess we'll have to start with the game developer. So we'll start with you, Tony. From a fundamental point of view, what are the similarities and what are the differences?
Well, I've been in both areas really. So
you should know that. That's why I'm starting with you.
Well, the key, what excited me about moving into blockchain and NFTs, and I know at every conference everyone talks about the same things, but it is about ownership, right? And if you look at what I call the old style games, and the fact that you're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in games like Fortnite and actually not owning anything, I think it's about time the industry changed and it came back to the gamers as opposed to the publishers, and I think that's a great thing. And I think that to me is the number one game changer, excuse the pun, that will happen. And I think if the big AAA games companies aren't looking at this seriously now, they will get left behind, and it will be gamers that will move. I'm going to play a game where I can own that content, make my money back, sell it for a profit, or use it in another game. And that's what we're working on, the whole interoperability of NFTs that you buy from our games, you can spread across.
I mean, Malte, looking at it from an investment point of view, obviously, you originally started out doing a lot of investment into esports, and then you sort of moved into more traditional games. Then you've gone very aggressively this year into blockchain. So what do you see there on the sort of similarities and differences, and why do you think, why you've gone so heavily into blockchain?
I mean, it's not the theme is the same. The theme is called community, right? And so we've been building communities for a long time in various games, and we know a little bit from like specifically esports, and we think about core games, and they sort of like, they are the games, so say they built the game. Many of the esports titles being built by community and mods, right? When you think this through, I mean, it's ownership, not in the economic sense, but at least in sort of the spiritual, mental sort of sense, because it's their baby, they police it, they run with it, they really deep into the game when it comes to like time investments, and to some extent even financial investments, all the items and whatnot they're building there. And it's nothing else that you put this on a new technology level for the community to like actually have not only economic ownership, but they have governance, and there's one of a few key moments in our competitive life. I remember very vividly when the first time, I'm a CSGO player, I must admit, and the first time Valve essentially started to roll back an update when the community was yelling and screaming of some things they've launched in, and so that was a very key moment, I think, in community/gaming history, when you see the community having that power, and if you give them more tools, and here blockchain is a fantastic tool, right, to model an economy, to give ownership, to give voting, and to also to share economic upside with it. And that is just the sort of a basic theme we've been long behind, and you only waited for the moment you could do that, right? Because after all, like we as an investor, which is a very big novum, we invest into DAOs, so this is like when you talk to like normal, ordinary, traditional M&A lawyers, and they advise you on doing deals into corporations and whatnot, and you call them and say, oh, by the way, can you help us to invest in a DAO? Those guys look at you like, what is this, right? And when you think of it like, this is something the community owns, and we as investors, in most part, we have actually the same say like the community. The community has the governance rights. We have the same governance rights. There's nothing else. So it's really like the democratization of that process. And that's something we're very excited about as players and community guys, the foremost.
I'll try and unpick a bit of the terminology if it sort of comes up for people who don't know. So a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, and effectively it is sort of the blockchain equivalent of a company, not really in the legal sense, but in the blockchain sense. And normally you would have sort of you'd normally own a token or an NFT, and that would make you a member of the DAO. And then a DAO would probably organize itself by having people could propose things, and then people with the token or the NFT could vote on that, and then those votes would be binding in terms of how the DAO deploys its assets, or it could be a DAO around a game or something like that. So if you're not sure what a DAO is, that's one explanation. I mean, it's a good point about community, which we've sort of been discussing throughout the afternoon so far. I mean, Bozena, I mean, you're in a slightly different situation, that you're sort of you're a platform. So Gamee, before the blockchain side of things, where people were playing these very simple sort of, I mean, almost like mini games to sort of earn rewards in the game and real money, in fact. And now you're bringing the blockchain to that. So I guess from that point of view, I'm guessing the games won't necessarily change. Maybe they will, but certainly how you're using blockchain to sort of organize and kind of refine your community is probably the area that you're thinking about. Is that correct? Can you talk a bit about how you're thinking?
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
that? Yeah.
So looking at the motivations why people come and play, and now I can speak from both sides, because from 2015 we have been building a free-to-play gaming platform. It had nothing to do with blockchain, and in the past, let's say 18 months, we have shifted into how to take it to the next level. So I kind of can look at it from both point of views, and now we have like dual community. We have a community of 30 million of the traditional gamers, and then we have 1 million of people onboarded to crypto, the very first step. And looking at how we work with them and what the motivations are, some of them are the same, right? So people come to play games. The motivations really differ by game, like compete with others, collaborate, complete a level, that stays the same. But just the fact that we can use the features of blockchain at this, what the other people have already talked about, and other incentives. Like I can actually participate, I'm a part of the community, when the value is created, I share the value, I have a voice, and all the ownership around it. I also have to say that we have seen signals that people are interested in things like that even before we started implementing blockchain into our new app, because of like how the community operated, right? They always voted on what the next game on the platform should be. They always had opinions about the features. There was a gaming currency that is possible to cash out in fiat or USD, as you want to name it. And we started introducing these rewards to people as the community grew. We took percentage of our revenue as a company and we gave it back to people as rewards. Now they absolutely loved it. And the more we give away, the more we listen to the community, the more our community grew and the revenue and everything. So that was the moment when we really started thinking, okay, there is something in this. How can we take it to the next level? And here you go. There is a tech called blockchain that can take it to the next level. But the principles essentially do not really change, just make it real.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I think sometimes, certainly some of us who have been around for a while, we get a bit sort of carried away with the blockchain techie side and argue about which blockchain's the best. But actually looking at it from a product point of view, just what features is it giving to in your case, an existing product, or what features could it add to a product you want to make? The techie stuff you don't need to worry about that from the top level. You need to think about, effectively what it's bringing, and that's sort of ownership.
Especially the gamers I'm talking about, they don't want to know that this is blockchain, right? It's something that's like unnecessary information. Like you would explain to a normal gamer what type of database the game you're holding in your hand is using. It doesn't really matter. It's like what you do with it, right?
Yeah, good.
So
okay,
John, actually on that point, because it's quite good. So with like one of our games is Doctor Who, which has a massive fan base, but a fan base probably 99% of people haven't got a clue what blockchain is. Might have heard of NFTs, but the most important thing is to onboard these people without confusing them, without throwing loads of our buzzwords at them. And actually, when you sign up with us, your account is automatically an Ethereum wallet. You don't even know that. Right, it's created for you. You buy NFTs with a credit card, with PayPal, or with crypto. Right, it's like an e-commerce checkout. And I think that UI is very important. And if you want to dig deeper, there are, and people, kind of engage and educate themselves, you can find out about the technology. You just dig deeper into the FAQs and go, oh, that's how oh, I can trade these. Oh, I own them. And I think it's really important that the UI is smooth and easy. And I think, where it used to be, John, when we first started, the UI was incredibly painful and the friction was unbelievable. And, even MetaMask is complicated for a lot of people. And if you can try and reduce those barriers and make it simple and fun, and the game obviously being good, then we're a long way there. And I'm really seeing some really cool stuff coming through from other people as well that you wouldn't even know it was blockchain, but the features behind it are. Right?
Mm-hmm. On that context, I will just have a shout out that Will Wright just sort of decloaked his new thing he's doing, which is actually using the Forte platform. So it's all using blockchain, but it's you wouldn't know about it, and it's Will Wright. So it's interesting if you know who Will Wright is. David, I mean, you've done this transition, I suppose, from kind of traditional games to blockchain. How do you think that industry? Are you sort of in the vanguard of that industry, and everyone's going to move that way, or is it a bit more complicated? Is it still? I mean, I sort of come across certain people who are still very anti-NFT at the moment, or who still have this sort of I mean, how do you see that sort of culture transition?
So I think first of all, a lot of the anti-NFT sentiment is based on misinformation. Unfortunately, Ethereum has taken the lead in terms of defining what an NFT is, and Ethereum is a proof of work state, with proof of work architecture, which means every transaction just requires a ton of energy. There's other blockchains out there that are much more energy efficient. They're using what's called proof of stake. So, Wax is one of those blockchains, and we work on that blockchain for a number of reasons. But first and foremost is that they are incredibly energy efficient. The way, like most proof of stake blockchains, it doesn't take any more energy to process a transaction in a proof of stake blockchain than it does on a regular e-commerce or game server. So that eliminates the environmental problem, which is what most people have an issue with. Some people have an issue with the idea of owning a digital item. And, like, how do you value something that doesn't really exist? And I just say, well, how is a trading card physical trading card have value? For some people it does. For other people, it's, actually probably has negative value because it wastes space. So, I think that there needs to be education. And there is a balancing act here because, as, like Tony has said, and Bozena has said, ultimately, at the end of the day, for a gamer, a blockchain should be really mostly invisible. It's back-end technology for the game developer and publisher. It's not something that really should be of concern to the player. The Wax blockchain has an interesting feature called the Wax Cloud Wallet, which is, if you've ever tried using it, it's designed to be like logging into any game or website. You don't have to use blockchain keys or any of that kind of, weird stuff. It's got a bunch of social logins. So, you can even use things like Steam or Discord to log into that wallet. And those are the kind of things I think, that are going to be developing. Blockchain will get easier to use as more and more people come on board and people realize the friction points and how to fix them. Now, going back to your initial question about what the difference between a blockchain game and a regular game is, it really is just the monetization model at the end of the day. And what I see coming from the traditional game space is that right now where blockchain gaming is very similar to the early days of free-to-play and microtransaction and Facebook games. So if you actually look at most blockchain games, they look a lot like Mafia Wars, honestly, when you look at the core gameplay loop. And that's what you're seeing. The only difference is the monetization model. So I think what you're going to see long-term is that that the monetization model will be adapted by most, if not all games long-term, just as microtransactions have become adopted by most games in the space now. And different games will have different features, and how deep the monetization model goes will vary. Some games, as Malte mentioned, will have this sort of community ownership, which I think is really interesting long-term. But most games won't. Most games will use just portions of the monetization model.
Yep. No, absolutely agree with that. Yeah. I think it is. And I think, in fact, it's sort of interesting. I think we've just been discussing sort of DAOs, and I think we get very focused on the economics because that's sort of where we are at the moment. But I see over like the next decade some really interesting stuff around sort of community and how you sort of DAOs, how sort of game guilds become DAOs and they become these sort of living kind of communities which have value attached to them, and how that can help with sort of toxicity in communities. And I think there's lots of really things that no one's looking at now. It's too far down the line, but yeah, good points. I've got some questions. I'm going to try and slip some questions in as well. So I think we've covered that first sort of question pretty well. So Skirmantas, I'm going to come to you as our sort of discovery expert, and we have a question. Someone who is sort of new, blockchain stuff sort of new to them. They're not an expert at all. Could you recommend a couple of? They said mobile blockchain games, but doesn't have to be mobile games. So what would you sort of recommend to people who are, obviously, I guess now a lot of people in the game space are sort of hearing about this sort of stuff and may take a different view than us sort of positive people, but playing is 99% of the understanding, I've always found. So what would you recommend to people if you you're really not technical, you just want to sort of take a taste of what this new stuff is about?
Yeah, I think it really depends on kind of what's your goal. Is it really to just try out something that kind of works, or is it again kind of to try play to earn and then figure out how to make some money? So I think
give us a couple of each.
Yeah, what I like, for example, you can do both. You can just play for fun. You can play to earn on the same game. Just kind of what I liked is I think EOS had a really good game kind of called Prospectors. I mean, really good try. Not 100% sure where they are now, but it was sort of like a Travian-like try. And I like that approach, that they were brave enough to try kind of going for this. Again, obviously, Axie is something worth going and trying for. That it's a bit of a on-chain versus off-chain thing. So, beware, but that's also a good thing because you don't know what's where and you don't need to know sometimes. I think, just two of those there are, but there are also kind of Splinterlands, Alien Worlds, Upland, the ones kind of worth trying out and pretty big names in the industry.
I've got a mobile game, John.
Oh yeah, no, go on, shill it.
Hey, one of the first. Hey, I'm going to stick it. I'm going to blatantly.
Go for it.
So it's called Reality Clash, right? It's one of the first. It's a mobile game. It's on the app stores. Download it now. And you can go to realityclash.com, click on the armory, and you go to the NFT store. So the game is an augmented reality combat game, and the NFTs are limited edition guns, right? So you can go to the store, buy the NFT, download it into the game, use it, look really cool because they're limited edition, and when you're finished with it, take it out and sell it. It's been one of the originals. It's one of the first that has NFTs. It's one of the first that Apple have approved, and it's really fun. Now, it isn't a true blockchain game. It's hybrid because it's just connecting the NFTs into onto a blockchain for you to trade. It's not like an Axie where it's attached to a blockchain to play it. So it's kind of a hybrid version. But yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to say one thing about that, which I think is a misnomer. The idea of most games don't run on the blockchain. You don't want to run games on the blockchain because it's incredibly an inefficient way of computing. What you want to do is you want to run your game on a traditional platform, be it web, which most blockchain, quote unquote, blockchain games are now. And you use the blockchain essentially as another database for the game. So you're really most games should really only be connecting to a blockchain via an API. There's not a real reason to try and run most of your processes on a blockchain. It's just incredibly inefficient.
I'm not going to go into that discussion. There would definitely be some contrary viewpoints on that, but I think it's in general, running everything on a blockchain doesn't make a lot of sense, and you're using it as a sort of economic layer in most cases. But we won't start talking about Solana and other blockchains at the moment. We'll stick with that one. Go back to the question. I think from the mobile side, I would say Splinterlands is on mobile now. Upland is probably the sort of classic sort of hybrid model on mobile. Reality Clash, of course. Those are sort of three on mobile that I would recommend. So continuing on success, I'm going to approach success from a sort of another angle now. So success of blockchain games compared to traditional games. I'll go to you, Malte or whatever we're saying. I don't know. I'm confused now.
Or whatever.
Yeah, I know. That doesn't help me. So from an investment point of view, obviously you're getting all these pitches all the time, and people are telling you, here's a game, it's going to make you, going to make you, $100 million, whatever, if you invest now. And I do kind of think, when you're looking at a traditional game, how that makes money, and then a blockchain game, how that makes money for you as the investor. What's the difference there? So I guess I'm saying, how is a blockchain game, how is the sort of financial success of a blockchain game different to what we've seen in the past, and how does that impact how you look at them as investors?
Yeah, I wanted to refer to one question we had here in the chat earlier, was the whole notion of like, there's obviously token you could dabble with in selling and buying, so to say, but there's also the traditional equity, right? So it's not like either or, and that's one of the like big questions which we as investors, including our peers, sort of try to figure out, like, if it's either or the combination of both, or if there's even a token at a certain point you invest in. Sometimes you see teams who want to build something and they have an idea, but the token isn't being defined, nor has it even been built, nor it can be generated. So you can technically not really buy it or something like that. So that is all sort of, it's a big spectrum, and there's no standard. It's something we are in the process of figuring out. Conceptually, I think the big difference here being, and I think this is a massive upside for game developer, is essentially the liquidity a token provides. If everything goes well and you build something that community buys into, that doesn't necessarily need to be like a full game you deliver, but like there's a concept, there's pre-sales on some social concept, some game ideas, and so on and so forth. Community buys into, you'd be able to pre-sales, so to say, product, even though you haven't fully delivered, which is an interesting one, because you can essentially create liquidity for you as a team to keep building what you wanted to build. Big difference to traditional financing world, where you're going to go and you need to find pre-seed money and then seed money and then an A, and every single time you be fundraising, it's difficult and you may not make it, and so on and so forth, right? So that is very, very different here. Now, if everything again goes well and you keep delivering something, you'd be able to, like, through a series of like private sales of token to community or investors, right? You're going to get to some sort of a public token event, which essentially you'd be able to sell on, mostly these days, decentralized exchanges, sell the token, and you essentially have that equity or like token value, so to say, the locked value in the network of your tokens. And that obviously is you as a company or your foundation or the DAO, whoever else sits on top of that of that assets, owns a bunch of those tokens in a sense of a treasury. And that treasury, again, is something you can work with. So for you as a game developer team, it changes, to my mind, the game completely, because I'd have very different sources of funding, which I hadn't had available prior. Now, for us as an investor, that means we have a very different sort of life cycle business, because if the game does well, or like the process does well, as I mentioned earlier, there's only a smaller window to get involved as a private investor, so to say. You can get much earlier into like the public sector, so to say, when the token has been traded. But the beauty is that you got that liquidity very early on, and by the sheer numbers of buyers, which is community backed. Those communities like own it, you airdrop it, they buy it, and they constitute essentially that liquidity event, which gives you a much higher alpha, so to say. In the financing world, people say alpha, meaning the upside, so to say, to the token, which constitutes a much more favorable economic for game developer team than in the private world. Because when you look into like traditional funding, in between like a seed round of a game or game team, so to say, to like maybe a public event, we look at sometimes 5, 7, 10 years. You sit on illiquid sort of equity, which is worth something, but you can't sell it. And in token land, it's different. You may be, if everything goes well, you may be public with your thing in like 6, 9, whatever, 12 months, and you sit on this big treasury of value you can work with. Very different game.
Everything in blockchain is faster, basically. If
it goes well, Also, well, to that point, well. Yeah, to that point, like it's much higher like upside alpha, but it's also much higher beta. So like if something goes wrong, you're sort of off the cliff very quickly. So it's high risk, high return sort of environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind about tokens as a form of raising financing and equity is that it's right now a lot of, I would say, unregulated, in that most governments haven't dealt with it.
Mm.
So when you are thinking about doing a token issue, you really have to consider where your company is based. How are you offering the tokens? Because you could really trip yourself up with financial regulators if you don't do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting that the term unregulated is sort of in between. You know what the laws are, and you know what's right, and you know what's wrong. Unregulated is literally a horrible grey area where no lawyer can give you the definitive advice of what is legal and what isn't legal, because no one knows, because there's no laws there. So it is a very kind of tricky situation, particularly if you're in the US. I think that seems to be the case. So let's move on to a more general question. So someone's asked, has blockchain gaming evolved into what you expected, or has it surprised you? So anyone wants to sort of jump in on, are we just sort of following the trajectory we thought, or maybe let's change the question. What surprised you about mobile games, blockchain games trajectory in I guess in 2021? Anyone want to jump in on a surprise?
All records have been broken. I mean, last year.
Did that surprise you, or
it surprised me how quickly it's gone. For 3 years, I mentioned the word NFT to people and they glazed over. It's like, what are you talking about? And then suddenly this year, I finally don't have to explain what I do. And, I mean, the market cap for NFTs last year was, I think it was about 340 million. And then I read that it's gone up this year 1,700% or something. I think we did more. There was more NFT volume sales in August than there was for the whole of last year. I mean, that's quite exceptional. The speed of which it's grown, and that is the community getting behind it. It's back to that. The tiny community. And I think I read on CoinMarketCap that there's only, I think, 10 to 20,000 NFT buyers a week. That's it. There's 4.3 billion mobile game players. There's 10 to 20,000 a week. And yet it's generating, in Q1 this year, $1 billion. Can you imagine when there's 100,000 a week? That's 10x. You're into a $100 billion market before you can blink. And then you're into sort of mobile game stage very, very quickly. I mean, it's just incredible, the speed of this market.
There's a couple of things about that. First of all, that 20,000 number is very underreported. I think that may actually only be on the Ethereum blockchain and doesn't take into account other blockchains. So that's just a lot of the data can be somewhat misleading because different organizations will look at different things, and there's very few organizations that look at all blockchains and everything that's going on all blockchains. The other half of it right now, in terms of the dollar volume, is a lot of that is driven by hyper crypto whales on Ethereum. So what you're seeing is that, when you look at like $100 million in a couple of days, most of that $100 million will literally be driven by a couple of dozen transactions that are in the tens of millions of dollars. It's basically like hypercar world. It's kind of like saying that the Ferrari market defines the car market, is what's literally been going on in a lot of this analysis.
Good. Skirmantas, it's maybe a good opportunity for you, because DappRadar oversees pretty much. I don't know, how many is it now? Probably getting 20 blockchains. I mean, how do you see that that sort of kind of situation? I guess we're still in a very sort of Ethereum sort of centric world, as sort of David was sort of, I guess, as you'd expect him to, sort of kicking back against from the Wax point of view. But I mean, do you see now the different blockchains are sort of finding their own communities, or or do is that how you expect it to be? There'll be lots of blockchains out there, and certain sort of types of experience will be on a certain blockchain, or will we all have wallets on all these blockchains? How do you see that playing out? What are the trends there?
Yeah, I kind of think there are some, Ethereum maxes, Bitcoin maxes, and probably even Wax maxes, and so on and so on. But the masses are kind of going where the money is flowing. So where you can make some buck, the masses are going there. And I think, like, we saw that with Tron, we saw it with Binance Smart Chain. If there is a quicker blockchain that you can quickly replicate what you have on kind of a more established blockchain, everyone is just going there. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people are just going there and trying to make money. So getting back to the question, kind of what was surprising or unexpected, I think it just keeps surprising me how quickly copycats are appearing, given that the complexity of dApps are increasing heavily. When we had hot potatoes in 2018, it was like, okay, just copy paste the contract website, that's it. Now we get to play to earn games, and it's still surprising how quickly they appear. Like there was Axie, suddenly it exploded, and then we have all those, I don't know, crypto blades and so on and so on and so on. Where technically they're not kind of copycats, but a lot of those games are just kind of, they have no thought into tokenomics. They're just kind of, okay, let's put something here and there. Let's push it live. It lives for a month, for 1-2 months, and then we do another one. So really do your own research. That keeps surprising me, but I think there's also something in there that whatever happens in this industry, because of the open source and kind of everything being open, it's much easier to copy. Therefore, yeah, it's easier to make money. It's easier to lose money, as it was already said. So yeah, I think that.
Yeah. Well, do you want to go for this one as well? Have you written down in the Q&A that you want to answer this question live?
No.
You're looking confused now.
Yeah. Sorry. I didn't. I'm now getting used to how you pronounce my name.
Sorry.
No, I was the one thing I wanted to mention on this one, and it's a very subtle change in user psychology. When we think of like games and how games have been sort of monetized over a long period of time now, and in the games industry, whether it's premium games or free-to-play games and so on and so forth. I mean, subconsciously, I think users knew they would never see their money back. Even though it feels sometimes different if you play games and whatnot, but subconsciously, that money is sort of like gone, right? Whereas I think in blockchain and blockchain games, it feels a bit more like an investment, which makes you spend more. Because it's not, I mean, there's a risk, right? There's a risk you lose that kind of money, but if you're investing, you happily put that up because you got the upside, and so I think that subconsciously, and it's sort of like taps into a belief system, I would say, in a few new communities, where you see them spending more in a game than in an ordinary game, because they know there's this upward trend, and if I get more people involved, and I got to make money, and it's an investment, that I think that constitutes a play to earn economy. And the other one, which I think it's a bit of a wild claim, but I will still make it. I think that games will be blockchain-based games will be a big entry point, a big gateway into decentralized finance. We have a bunch of data points suggesting that the new users being created into blockchain land, and I'm thinking like the users which actually enter blockchain land, they create their own wallet, they become real crypto pros, so to say. It's still hard to get there, right? Once they sort of make their money with NFTs and tokens in crypto games, I don't think they would really go back to a large degree. Yes, some of them, which we see that in the Philippines, where we invested in Yield Guild Gaming, for example. Yes, there's a bunch of wealth, so to say, they pull out, or they make a living, whatever they do. But the most part they leave in, and they keep jumping from there on into decentralized finance, right? Which you think of as like a bigger theme into like a new era of virtual economies. That's why I think blockchain game is so interesting. When you look at this and step back for a minute and see what's happening on the bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what will be interesting, and we see it to a degree already, is when those sort of DeFi sort of primitives start getting integrated into game structures as well. I mean, I guess you start to see it with staking and those sort of things as well. I think that there'll be a lot of overlap between those sort of, you can imagine protocols like Compound and Aave sort of linking into some of the bigger games, and yeah, that's another podcast, another conference discussion. Skirmantas, you wanted to go for is there more room for service providers, wallets, protocols, etc.?
Yeah, so I'm a believer in a multi-chain ecosystem overall, and I kind of think and I hope that there's going to be probably hundreds and thousands of them. I think hundreds are already there. The thing is, what I want to highlight is that don't build killers. I mean, Ethereum killer, EOS killer, whatever it is. I don't think that works. I don't think that's even something that needs to be done. I think what we need to build is more like, how can we collaborate? How can we use something that's already existing there? Okay, build bridges, make it work with your blockchain. There's just a few million of people now using kind of the blockchain daily. When we get to 50 million, when we get to 500 million, imagine what's the scale needed to reach that. And even if all these blockchains are now evolving and kind of having more TPS and so on, I don't think if one blockchain is going to be enough. So I think keep building, but build with the idea not to kill something, but rather kind of make it better for someone. And that's it.
I think the killer thing comes from us terrible journalists trying to sort of set up competitions. It's like PlayStation versus Xbox all over again, or Android and iPhone. Yeah. So we're sort of coming to the end, but I want to take sort of one question, then sort of give it to you all as a sort of an ending question. And now I've sort of lost it. It was the first one, wasn't it? Oh no, where are we going? Okay, it's actually that's sort of standard way of ending. So what are you excited about happening in the blockchain gaming world in the next year? Obviously, we've sort of said it moves very fast, so quite sort of hard to predict. But what kind of stuff are you sort of looking for? Would you kind of think is going to happen? However you want to sort of frame that question. David, do you want to lead us off on that one?
Yeah. So I don't know about the next year because the blockchain technology evolves pretty quickly, but games do not necessarily. In terms of, game development takes time, usually more than a year if you're going to make anything that's substantial. So, I'm really looking at maybe, 2, 3, 5 years down the line. And what excites me is the idea that most games will in some way incorporate this type of economy into their game. I do want to make one point that connects us back to the traditional gaming realm. And it's the idea of play to earn. The reality is that play to earn has been around for decades. It used to be called gold farming in MMOs, and it was the skins trade in Counter-Strike. The thing that blockchain does is it allows all that economic activity, which was all gray market, right? And it allows it to become above board, out in the open, and also allows the game companies to directly benefit economically from that trade that has existed for decades, which they were just losing out on, quite frankly, other than, it was good for World of Warcraft because all those Chinese gold miners have to pay for monthly accounts. But, for most other MMOs, especially free-to-play ones, gold farming, it doesn't really benefit the company economically in any way. So this is to me, what's exciting about blockchain is taking all this economic activity that was already happening in the game space and really making it more legitimate.
Yeah, very good point. Very, very good point. And obviously, by legitimizing it, it obviously kind of makes it much bigger, probably 10, 100x it, because now it's you're not fiddling around on messaging boards and stuff. But Bozena, what are you looking for the next 6 months, year, 5 years, whatever time frame you want to frame it?
Well, the time frame's very funny to speak about. I'm personally excited about the speed of change, and that's, I think, why we're all of us here in the business, because we enjoy the speed and the change. I also think personally, I feel challenged by the fact that you see so many things happening, like popping up as like, this is a strong wave, this is a strong trend. But what's challenging is to see beyond, a little bit beyond, because as David said, it takes some time to create actually like a fully fledged game or a platform, and you cannot jump on any small wave that's happening around you. You just have to focus on like, what is the end value for people, what is the real fun, and how are you going to build it? And it does not take a week. So you really have to like watch the sentiment on the market, like the innovation, of course, like what's the direction, but at the same time keep focused on what is it that you want to build, so you don't get distracted. And this is what we're actually doing right now. So that's like a daily challenges. I'm really excited about the fact that we have a community that has probably never had their hands on any blockchain or crypto, and seeing them discover the value, not through like explanation or education, but just actually through the gameplay, is very, very exciting. So now this is a game currency, as you know, but hey, you actually own it, and you have upgraded a game character, but you own it, you can trade it. So walking them through in this story through the power of blockchain is very, very exciting. And that's probably what I'm mostly looking forward to see.
Lovely, good stuff. Yeah, as you should point out, you can download the app now, Google Play and Android, isn't it? What's the exact? Is it Arcade? Is that the exact?
It's Arcade. It's Arcade. It's a waiting line for our big product that's coming end of October.
That's ARC8.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, good. Okay, Tony, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I agree with all of what David said. Actually, I think play to earn and virtual currencies and all that have been around for a long time, but I'm really waiting for a big, well-known AAA license to come in to bring in the mass players and make the UI super simple.
Is that Doctor Who? I mean...
Yeah, but I'm also thinking, things like FIFA, Call of Duty, something where NFTs could be used in it, and that could easily be an addition, which will just make the market explode.
Yeah, it will be fascinating. Okay, Skirmantas.
I'm waiting for Metaverse, like something that's significant enough. I don't expect it to be Ready Player One kind of thing already next year, but I think we'll definitely see some tries. We already have CryptoVoxels, Decentraland, and so on, but it's like we're not yet there that I would jump on that and spend the whole weekend. So I want to see that. I hope that happens next week. Next year.
You're really going for it. You want it all now.
I got used to it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a metaverse. I think the sandbox is quite interesting from that point of view. I've in recent kind of weeks actually looking at the sandbox. I've sort of seen how people are building in there, and it's sort of quite it's a sort of open world where people can build stuff. So maybe one to look out for. Clearly not investment advice. Malte, how are you gonna?
So for me, when I zoom out a little bit on the time scale and we try to compare different computing platforms and their evolution in games, I always refer to the mobile gaming ecosystem, right? And my first touch point with it back in 2000 was when we built mobile games for Symbian. I don't know if you remember Nokia 33 something it was. And for me, one of those iconic moments was Snake. I don't know if you remember Snake, right? And as a gamer back then, you look at this like, what is it? Like, is that even a game? And you don't, whatever, right? But back then I should have known what this means, right? And I didn't. I completely missed the point of what this actually meant. And then you go through the history then, which we lived through. All of a sudden there was an iPhone moment coming after the Snake moment, and then there was the Clash of Clans moments and so on and so forth, right? So I think we sort of in between Snake. I don't want to compare like Axie to Snake in any way possible, and but we a little more advanced, but we still years out for the iPhone moment for crypto as a platform. And the thing I'm expecting is that usability and the biggest challenge we have is still having scalability, and all of that is just will be getting to a point where we can claim that an iPhone moment sort of comes in sight, and everybody who sort of gets in this will know, this is so difficult. Like if I today, if my grandmother would still be alive, I think I could give her an iPhone and she could play a mobile game, If I would give her like crypto, I don't think she would be able to get into crypto at this point. Even I struggle sometimes, to get this all going, you know what I mean? And I'm probably one of the more technical guys here, but that's sort of what I'm expecting, that we get like infrastructure-wise, tool-wise, usability-wise to a level we could start really scaling at larger scale.
Absolutely, good.
And there's a few very interesting projects on the horizons. I say to give me hope.
Well, you can't say that and then not tell us what they are. Which ones are they?
One of the, so when we see many sort of crypto games companies coming to us, and when you see every single of them starts in their roadmap to build an own wallet, what does it tell you? It tells me there's still this bottleneck, right? And there's obviously a few interesting wallet projects, which I think make it a much easier thing to get in. So for example, right, so there's interesting NFT scaling solutions, right? So we invested in Immutable, for example, which really makes it scalable at peak and so on and so forth. That's the kind of stuff which we're really excited about, which solve for like still underlying things sort of in the basement. Nobody really looks in, but unless the whole machinery in the piping works in the basement, you can't get the whole building to work.
Good. Lovely, excellent. So thank you very much, everyone, for your not presentations, for your opinions and your expertise in this field. As I guess we're pointing out throughout the whole afternoon, it is very early, and a lot of this stuff is still sort of being worked out. And so if you're getting in now is the time. Now is always the time to get more involved with blockchain, and find these people on LinkedIn and Twitter and kind of make your connections there. So thank you, everyone, for your time.